The motherfucker arrived at the West Coast from the Midwest. He took a train and met women of every size and shape in different cities. Tina with the straight-ahead knees in Milwaukee, Annie with the caustic laugh in Chicago, Betsy's lopsided cleavage in Bismarck, Crazy Hetty in Butte, that lion tamer in Vegas, the smart farm girl from Bakersfield. Finally, he dismounted for good at Union Station in Los Angeles. "I fuck mothers," he said to anyone who asked him, "and I do it well," he added. He was also reasonable. He didn't fuck married mothers, only available ones who wanted to date and who lined up an appropriate babysitter for the child that made them a mother in the first place. He wined, dined, danced, romanced, martinis and kisses on the neck, bloody steak and Pinot Noir. The word beautiful said sincerely with a casual lean back into a booth. He asked pointed, particular questions. By midnight, had most of them in bed, clothes off in a flash, the speed of a woman undressing, changing rapidly over time, faster and faster. And he was a very good lover, attentive and confident, a giver and a taker. And the mothers lined up to see him. Their babysitters growing rich. 20s stuffed in those tight teenage pockets. He never liked any of them for longer than one or two times. Or he liked them, but not enough to keep calling. "I love all women," he told himself. He liked to try on hats in stores. One afternoon, he was at a fancy Bel Air party on a damp lawn talking to some damp and fancy people. They stood in groups of 3 and 4, stirring lemonades laced with vodka, that liquid shark swimming amongst the yellow feathers in their drink. The motherfucker wandered over the lawn to the starlet, famous for her latest few films, standing with the red straw hat and matching red dress, the one watching her 4-year-old play on the lawn chairs, the one whose husband had left her for a man, or so said the newspapers. Everyone else was afraid to talk to her. She had shiny hair under that red hat and was drinking nothing, hands still at her sides. The motherfucker told her he liked her hat. She said, "Thank you." He asked about her son. She said, "He's 4. The kid rolled in the grass, collecting stains on his clothes like lashings from a green whip. "I think you're a good actress," the man said. "Why do you always pick such sad characters to play?" "Me?" she said. "Sad characters?" And she flashed him her teeth, the long, white ones that had been photographed a million times by now, each tooth a gleaming door into the mysteries of her mouth. The motherfucker said, "Yes," he said. He stood with the starlet for a while and told her he was a graduate student at the School for Emotional Ventriloquists. She raised one carefully shaped eyebrow. "No," he said, "it's true." She laughed. "No," he said, "it's true. You throw your emotions on other people in the room," he explained, "and see what they do then." "So, what do they do?" she asked, keeping that perfect eyebrow halfway up her forehead. "It depends," he sighed. "Sometimes they lob them right back at you. Turns out life," he said to her, "is a whole lot like tennis." They walked to the gazebo. The party was ending, and the sun was going down, and the grass had turned a softer shade of green. He knew he needed to do something to make her remember her, to make her remember him. So he just stood there with her on the gazebo, watching her son, and put his hand on her famous shining hair, just for a second, lifted it off her back, and let it down again. She jumped. "Oh," she said. "Oh," he said. "Your hair was stuck." Then he didn't touch her again. Not for weeks. He got her phone number from the host. Motherfuckers have their ways. It took only one lie, and he left with those 10 numbers, 1 dash and 2 parentheses tucked with care inside his shirt pocket. At home, he put in a call to Crazy Hetty from Butte. He asked her a half hour of penetrating questions, and then he tried to have phone sex, but found he couldn't really muster up the gusto. His mind was elsewhere. The next day, he called up the starlet and asked her to dinner. She laughed. She sounded even prettier on the phone. "Aren't you afraid of me?" she asked. "After all, I am a movie star." He said no, he wasn't afraid of her. He thought of her as an interesting, attractive woman who happened to have a very public job. She said that was sure a new way to put it. They set a date to meet in an Italian bistro in Vermont, and there she signed 12 autographs. And he asked about how what she did as an actress and what he did as an emotional ventriloquist were similar. But she said they were in a restaurant and it was too distracting, and should they talk about something light while they were there? "Maybe you're afraid of me," he said, looking closer, eyes green and piercing. "Maybe I am," she said. And the rest of the dinner was quiet. The waiter asked for an autograph on a napkin, and by the time they left, it was already hung up by the host's podium on a red thumbtack, next to some signed black and white photographs of other stars, many of whom by now were regular people or else dead. The motherfucker recognized one of the mothers he fucked at a table on the right and waved while exiting, but the mother didn't acknowledge him because she was jealous and also because starlets made her nervous. The starlet found the motherfucker trustworthy, so she invited him back to her new house in the dark curves of the Hollywood Hills. The wood floors brown and shining, the pillows sentimental, the magazines unread. They sat and had a good talk on her thousands of dollars couch. He mentioned his train trip, and she said her father had been a conductor for years. They discussed depots. At the door, he did not kiss or hug her, but just said he had a terrific time. And then she closed the door behind him, pensive. She paced a little and then watched some TV. She saw herself in the news. The motherfucker went home and rented one of her latest movies and watched it closely. And even though it was a comedy, he looked at the smile on her face and decided she was possibly the saddest person he had ever met or pursued. He didn't touch her even when they went to lunch and she cried about her empty house and how she had known along with her husband but never would say it was true to herself. He didn't touch her even when she raised limpid movie eyes up to him and gave him that look that meant "kiss me" to film fans all around the world. He let all his mothers call and call, but he didn't pick up or call back. He invited the starlet to the ballet, and during Act 2, he picked up her hand. And while the stage was full of people as flowers and birds, trying with all available muscles to be lighter than air, their hands learned each other, fingers over fingers, palm on back, palm on palm, edge to wrist, watch bands clinking because both of them like to know what time it was at all times. He dropped her off, said he couldn't come in. She was disappointed. She dreamt he was making love to her in a hamper. Hetty from Butte called. Hetty's father was mad at her about something that had happened 4 Christmases ago, and Hetty was upset. The motherfucker talked to her for a while, but he couldn't concentrate and said he had to go write his graduate school paper on a relationship between sadness, mime, and ping pong. "Well, I didn't know you were in school," said Hetty. "I wish you would talk more about yourself." The motherfucker pretended he had call waiting. His goodbye was rude. He asked the starlet to dinner again. She was pleased. "He treats me," she told her friend, the other hot new starlet, "like a regular person." "Why on earth," said her friend, the other starlet, "would you want that? What's the point," said the other starlet, "of being a starlet in the first place?" Our starlet put her hand on her cheek. Her blush was the color of coral reef, but smooth. "I think it has to do with getting emotions thrown on you," she said. This dinner they shared a bottle of wine, and no one stopped to get an autograph. She was wearing a hat. She said he could come back to her house again. Maybe they could have some tea. They played the hand game under the table. and this time the volume was up twice as high. His whole body was taut for her. "George is asleep," she said, meeting her son. They drove back, and she paid the babysitter a huge tip to get her out of the house as soon as possible. And she went to the kitchen to put the kettle on, and the moment of the first kiss was prolonged, longer, prolonged. She offered tea, she offered wine, she went to the bathroom, and he pictured her in there, looking down at the toilet paper, which was not yellow but clear with other liquid. And she returned, sat next to him on the couch, picked up a magazine, stood, sat, stood, sat, and he thought, it has been a while since this woman has been with a man who wants woman. And so he just sat there first and thought of women, thought of what he loved about women, thought of the slopes and the jewelry, the lines and the circles, breasts of all sizes, emotion, opening, contraction. He watched her. She put her own head down on her own shoulder, coy, twitchy. "I think about you," he said. "What do you think about?" she asked. She ran through the movie scenes in her head. They were all very pretty options. He said, "I think about how nervous you are." Her face fell. "What?" "No," he flustered. It's great that you're nervous." His expression for once was open and earnest. She kept her eyes on him and laughed once then. The laugh that stole the hearts of a million moviegoers, that fed the wallets of a fat handful of studio executives. And he said, "Wait, what?" she said. He took a step away and looked at her. She made a wiry little joke about directors, then put her face nearer, ready to kiss him, to prove herself unnervous, how bold, how witty, but he didn't move forward. "Hang on," he said. She grew bolder, interrupted, said, "Hey, let's go outside. There are bushes out there." The motherfucker paused and smiled and said, "No." She twisted and said, "Come with me. Let's go to the bathroom counter." She had movie sex scenes on the bathroom counter and the bushes, both. Audiences like those a lot. He shook his head, "No." "Let's do it in a cliff under the tree," she sang. And he said, "No. I want to make love to you in a bed," is what he said. He stepped closer. For some reason, his hands were shaking. He used his finger as a pointer. He drew an invisible line around her. He said, "Listen, look. Desire is a house. Desire needs closed space. Desire runs out of doors or windows or slats or pinpricks. It can't fit under the sky. It's too large. Close the doors, close the windows. As soon as you laugh from nerves or make a joke or say something that just to say something or get involved with the bushes, then you blow open a window in your house of desire and it can't heat up as well. Cold draft comes in. It's not a very big house, is it?" she said. "Don't smile," he said. She pulled in her lips. "Don't smile," he said. "It's not supposed to be big at all. It should be the closest it can to being your actual size." She could feel it brimming on her lips, that superstar smile, the bow shape, the teeth long and solid tombstones. She knew just what she looked like. "Don't," the motherfucker said. "Harder." And the smile, like a wave at the beach, receded. And when she didn't smile, when the windows stayed shut, the glass bending out through the night but not breaking, the glass curved from the press of release but not breaking, and the tension went somewhere else, something buckled inside of her and made the longing bigger, tripled it, heavied it, made it so big the whole house grew thick and murky. This was not something she knew well, this feeling. She was used to seeing her desire like an Angora sweater discarded on the other side of the room. And she felt like she needed him in the same basic way she needed other things, like water. She was up again, filling her cup of tea, and he followed her in. And as she was pouring it, she took the teapot out of her hand and balanced it right on the top of the teacup. And while she was looking at that, her hand shaking now, he took her fingers and leaned in and kissed her. Took her face in his palms. Then suddenly, the faces were too close for anything else to be happening, and the kiss was soft and so sweet. And in the next room, the kid shifted and his dream switched to one about lightning and a boy who stuck his hand in the electrical socket. And what happened next? "What do you want?" said the motherfucker, getting ready to motherfuck. And he stepped into her house, and her hands were all over his face, his neck, his bones, his hair. "Stop asking questions," she said to him, kissing him again. "That breaks open your windows, doesn't it?" And the motherfucker felt he could crush her because she happened to be right. And he shut up, and his house grew smaller, smaller than he was used to. And she didn't smile or run to the bushes, so hers grew smaller, smaller than it had ever been, and then smaller, until she fit inside, gloved, a house of desire, the exact size and shape of her. She thought he might wheeze away, but then his hands touched skin, and her throat cleared and lifted. The next morning, a dry, clear day, the starlet made the motherfucker banana pancakes. Her son wandered in pajamas and got some pancakes too. The motherfucker took a shower in her gourmet shower and used shampoo made from the placenta of sea urchin. He came out as fresh and clean as an underwater urchin infant. She was a yield sign, all sinews and mush. And he sat down and she whispered, "That was a wonderful night." And he said, "It was." And he meant it.